Today, we're diving into the story of one of history's most terrifying Nazi criminals, a man who, for decades, was pretty much a ghost, Aribert Heim. Just listen to this. It was better not to go to the infirmary. People died there. Those are the chilling words of a survivor from the Mauthausen concentration camp, a place where seeking help didn't mean you'd get better. It meant you were handed a death sentence. So our story actually starts at the end. Picture this. It's August 1992, a gloomy hotel room in Cairo. An old man dies of cancer, all alone and in hiding. This man was once the very picture of Nazi power and cruelty, but now he's just a shadow. So who was this man, known around the world as Dr. Death? And here's the really disturbing part. How did one of the most wanted war criminals on the planet manage to escape justice for nearly half a century? To understand the ghost, we have to go back and meet the monster. So let's go back in time to the Mauthausen concentration camp in 1941. This is where his dark legend began. And get this, it took him just 6 weeks. In only a month and a half, this young, pretty, inexperienced doctor forged a reputation for pure sadism that would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives. In that short window, it's estimated he performed around 300 operations. Now, these weren't procedures to heal anyone. They were barbaric acts of torture. He was using inmates as human guinea pigs, and yeah, these operations were almost always fatal. What's really bone-chilling is just how methodical his cruelty was. He had a procedure. He'd pick a healthy prisoner, perform some useless surgery, often with no anesthesia at all, and then he'd inject gasoline or poison straight into their heart. And the final twisted detail, he'd time how long it took them to die with a stopwatch. Now, this wasn't like the infamous Dr. Mengele, whose experiments were often state-ordered. No, for Heim, this was often personal. Survivors testified that he operated just for kicks, for surgical practice, or even just because he was bored. He murdered patients who actually came to him for help. And in one of the most grotesque acts you can imagine, he cut off a victim's head, boiled away the flesh, and kept the skull as a paperweight on his desk. So you have to ask, how does someone become this kind of monster? Let's take a look at his early life and see how a star athlete transformed into a sadistic SS doctor. It's like there were two completely different sides to Aribert Heim. The public face was the celebrated athlete, a 6'3" handsome star on Vienna's championship ice hockey team, praised in the newspapers. But then there was the secret side. He was a deeply committed Nazi, joining the party when it was still illegal in Austria, completely fascinated by Hitler and this ideology of the perfect Aryan. You know, to understand how he got so radicalized, you have to look at the world he grew up in. Post-World War I Austria was just a hotbed of extreme nationalism, and it was there that Heim completely embraced this twisted ideology that saw doctors not as healers, but as soldiers of biology, meant to purify the human race. So after the war, you'd think he'd have to face justice, right? Well, he didn't. This next part of the story is about his almost unbelievable escape and how Dr. Death simply disappeared. This timeline is just baffling. So in 1945, he's captured by American forces. A year later, he's mysteriously released and completely avoids the Mauthausen trials. By the early 50s, he's living out in the open, working as a gynecologist in Germany. It's not until 1962 that he vanishes, literally hours before the police finally show up to arrest him. Which brings us to the most obvious question. How on earth did a wanted mass murderer manage to hide in plain sight for over 15 years? Well, the answer is just as unsettling as his crimes. He never even changed his name. He was in the public phone book. He married into a wealthy family, lived in a fancy villa, and opened a successful medical practice. His patients even said he was a very good doctor. It just seems that in post-war Germany, a country so focused on rebuilding, nobody was really looking that hard. But by 1962, things were changing. Investigators had new testimonies from Mauthausen survivors, and the walls were finally closing in. But someone tipped him off. He fled his home, left his wife and kids behind forever, and just disappeared. And that's what kicked off a decades-long global manhunt. So this begins the final chapter of his story, a 30-year hunt for a ghost, and a search for answers about a legacy of impunity. For the next 3 decades, Aribert Heim was one of the most wanted Nazi war criminals in the entire world. Investigators were chasing down leads everywhere, across Europe, Latin America, the Middle East. But he remained a complete phantom. And this is where he was hiding the whole time. He fled to Cairo, Egypt, took on the new name Tariq Hussein Farid, converted to Islam, and just lived this quiet, hidden life. I mean, you couldn't imagine a bigger contrast to his past. The whole mystery of what actually happened to him wasn't solved until 2009. That's when a German TV crew found a dusty old briefcase he'd left behind in his Cairo hotel room. And inside, it was a gold mine. His personal documents, passport, letters, medical files, proving he had died of cancer all the way back in 1992. As one expert put it, as one of the Nazi perpetrators who was able to elude justice, he evolved in a way into a symbol. He really did. He became the ultimate symbol of justice denied, the most wanted Nazi who just got away. But there's one last, unsettling twist. His body was never found. His doctors claimed he was buried in some common grave, but with no DNA, no physical remains, we can't be 100% certain. He truly lived and died as a ghost. In the end, Aribert Heim became a symbol of an evil that completely escaped the law.